So in this video, we're going to talk about discipline. But I'd like to start off by saying I don't know if that's the most effective question that can get you to become the disciplined person that you want. I don't have a specific structure for this video. I don't actually have any notes. This is not scripted. This is me just sharing maybe a couple of stories and a couple of things that have worked, not just for me, but for the guys that I've worked with in the counseling room over the past 7-8 years-ish. But the story that I have, the first one that comes to mind for me at least, does not actually come from the counseling room. It comes from when I was in the Marine Corps. So I'm kind of in a cool position where I can compare and contrast my military experience in the Marine Corps, which is not valorous, not glamorous. My military packet wouldn't show anything exceptional. But I was in the military nonetheless, so I would say that I have a baseline. I can compare that to some actual combat stories that I am reading in a book right now for Marines in Charlie Company 1-1 in Operation Medina in Vietnam. The compare and contrast is pretty stark, but I'd like to share with you how that kind of fits into the discipline narrative that maybe is relevant for this video. When I was in the Marines, we would go through something called a CFT. That stands for Combat Fitness Test. If you are conducting a CFT, the goal of the CFT is to become pretty much ready for any combat scenario. It's not just a jog, it's not just pull-ups or sit-ups. The CFT was actually an evolution from the PFT, which is a physical fitness test. It needed to become more rigorous, more three-dimensional. So as the CFT evolved, it pretty much started to mock, I don't know what the right word is, but it started to reflect, maybe that's the right word, what actual combat circumstances looked like. And the CFT was brutal. I threw up the first time that I did it. It is sprints, it is you're running in boots, it is you're carrying your best friend who's approximately the same weight as you, buddy drags, you're throwing things, it's a lot. It's much more intensive, more like a sprint than a run. It's worth asking, why is that? Why did the CFT evolve from the physical fitness test? Because the average physical fitness test, which is running, sit-ups, and pretty much a jog on pavement, is not reflective of what actual combat looks like. The reason why I referenced the book a minute ago is because the CFT, a combat fitness test, is as reflective as you can be of real combat without actually putting guys in real combat, without getting unnecessarily gory. The experiences of the Marines in Vietnam in the book that I'm reading were not good. Let's just put it that way. It was all of the things that you would probably associate with the worst chapters, the most bloody, explosive, difficult, strenuous circumstances in Vietnam. Why am I bringing any of this up? Discipline doesn't work if you don't have a goal or a mission. It is very easy for like the average guy in like a safe country like America to be able to say, I want to become more disciplined. I see this time and time again in the counseling room. The shit just doesn't pan out the way that you want it to. And the reason that is because it's not nested inside of a larger vision. It's not nested inside of something meaningful. If you want to become disciplined, what's critical is that you find a goal that you actually give a shit about. What does that actually look like? If you want to be physically fit, that's a good one. Maybe that's a good access point. If you want to be physically fit, if you want to get in shape, having that nested inside of a broader narrative, a broader dialogue, such as, I want to be more mobile for my kids. I want to be able to play soccer with my daughters. I want to be able to enjoy all the ups and downs, all the physically strenuous things like maybe hiking or going for runs with my wife, something like that. That makes more sense. That's a better motivator. When you're talking about building discipline, what a lot of people don't talk about is friction. I would describe myself as a pretty disciplined person. I'm usually up around 4 or 5. I usually read the Bible, work out, work before I get my kids up, like all the things. My diet's pretty dialed in. I don't necessarily think I'm like hyper disciplined. I think that I just want to do things that actually fit the lifestyle that I want. And the reason why I brought up the soccer example is because I used to be extremely strong in terms of like my deadlifts and squats, but I couldn't run for shit. So that didn't fit the fact that I wanted to play soccer with my kids. That's why I use that as an example a lot. Why am I saying all this? The point that I'm bringing up for you is that there should not be friction in terms of the disciplined person, that identity that you want to be, and how you actually go about achieving it. I would not be disciplined at all if you put me into a pottery class or a dancing class. I might be the most lazy one. I'm not like a naturally hyper competitive person. I just want to get things done. I am a functional person. Maybe you are too. I don't know. But the point is if you introduce a ton of friction, for example, the pottery class or the dance class, my identity shifts. I am no longer the person that knows what to do. I'm like a fish out of water. Don't be the fish out of water for the discipline that you're trying to build. The better question is, what is the lifestyle that you're trying to achieve? So that is kind of like the broader vision discussion in terms of discipline. On the tactics side, there is something to be said for, I know embracing the suck almost gets overused, but like really embracing the suck. In therapy, this is called exposure therapy. It is the idea of doing the thing that makes you moderately uncomfortable. Not so uncomfortable that you're not willing to take the first step, but it also can't be just like too timid of a step. Maybe that's the right word. It can't be so timid of a step that it doesn't actually move the needle in your life. When it comes to you building discipline, think about what the actual goal is and how that goal is nested inside of a larger vision, and then figure out how those puzzle pieces come together. For example, for a lot of guys that I work with, they might say something like, I want to get in shape. I'm working with a gentleman who's probably a couple 100 pounds overweight right now. He wants to be more disciplined. Those are his words. And getting in shape is part of it. He wants to get his steps in per day. And we will go over what are some of the things that get in the way of him actually achieving that desired outcome on a day-to-day basis. Usually it's stress. Usually it's curveballs that come out of nowhere. He's getting really good, as you may be, at identifying like, hey, here's kind of what the scope of my average day looks like. But you have to acknowledge that stress patterns run deep. So maybe you have been, I don't know if you're probably very disciplined in certain categories of life, but maybe it's like the thing that you're thinking about, that's the thing that maybe you're not super disciplined about. So you have to acknowledge that stress patterns run deep. What do I mean by that? You have avoided certain things, as I have. You have become stressed about certain things, overreacted about certain things in a very habitual way for probably a long time. This is not a therapy session, but just acknowledge that psychological patterns, emotional patterns, they do run deep in the brain structure, in your story, in a lot of ways. When you say, I want to become disciplined, you need to acknowledge at a very minimum, that you're kind of bucking the behavioral trend that is your past, that is your story. So I say that to kind of normalize maybe some of the hardship that you're experiencing right now in terms of how do I become more disciplined? And a good piece of evidence for that is, why can somebody read so many books on discipline, whether it's financial discipline, physical discipline, emotional discipline? Why can they read so many things but not actually develop the real life practical discipline? And the answer is actually pretty simple, because knowledge doesn't really mean shit. At the end of the day, if you can't apply your knowledge, this is why I love applied psychology, this is why I started a coaching business, this is why I wrote a book. If you can't apply the thing, do you really know it? And I asked that like legitimately. Maybe the answer is yes, and there are people smarter than I am where their job is to write things down and, you know, put it into spreadsheets, or I don't know, software guys where like knowledge really does translate, but they still need to translate it. Your discipline, whatever that is, needs to get translated. Knowing how to physically train, knowing how to maybe set an alarm, doesn't actually account for the stress that you're going to encounter when it comes to waking up when that alarm goes off. And like on the tactical side, this is why I do things that intentionally are going to piss my wife off, because I'm highly incentivized to do the right thing when I know that my ass is on the line, that my wife is going to get upset with me if I don't. So what does that look like? I set 3 alarms on my watch. I also set an alarm on my phone that will go off very loudly and wake up my wife. I set that and then I put it out of reach on the ground. And like when I was building my discipline, when I was framing it out, those strategies were very effective. and I say that and I'm smiling because like I didn't always nail it. There were times where I did actually eat it, you know, and my wife was frustrated with me. But the bulk of the conversation can't really be tactics and strategies. you probably know what to do to be disciplined. You didn't click on this video because you want to know the tips and tricks to be disciplined. Really, if you clicked on this video, it's more likely that you're curious about why you haven't been able to kind of translate what you already know, your pre-existing base of knowledge. That's where the stress patterns comes in. So I won't make this video very long, but I will end it by saying this. Acknowledge what are the common things that get in your way. Like, what do you feel? For example, like, if, again, going back to the physical fitness thing, if waking up early is very important to you, ask yourself what it is that you're feeling. And I see this in mental health a lot. People have a tendency to blame a diagnosis, and it's almost like a cop-out. You very well may have trauma, ADHD, depression, anxiety, whatever it is. And there's a gradation level to this. I don't mean to undermine anything. But what I've also seen is that sometimes people will, what's the right word? Use it as a cop-out. Like I have anxiety, therefore I can't wake up at my alarm, or I have this or that. Similarly, I've seen people with heavy diagnoses or a heavy combination of diagnoses that have been able to do remarkable things. So I say this as a point of optimism, that your discipline really is on the other side of your discomfort. So really identify what are the things, the emotional patterns that are kind of keeping you stuck, and then figure out how to break them. If you are simply too addicted to comfort in the morning, like Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in Meditations, I think thousands, plural, of years ago. I could be wrong, but a very long time ago. He wrote about the same thing in terms of being able to, when the sun comes up, he doesn't want to get out of bed, and neither do you, because we're all humans. We're wired the same way. We are addicted to certainty, to comfort, to our baseline. We're addicted to what we know. You bucking that trend is what is required for you to become the disciplined version of yourself. So this may not have been a tips and tricks video, but I also want to break that pattern of you continuing to watch tips and tricks videos. So yes, I think I'll end there. But what I would also say is that in the description below, there are 3 links. If you would like to learn more about some of the emotional patterns, some of the things that I've tried to bring to the table, some of my military experience and counseling experience, how I've tried to combine those and bring that to kind of help guys become the man that they need to be, that they want to be, that they can be. If you are interested in closing that gap or pursuing that, feel free to click any of the links below. There are ways to interact with me. What I would also say is feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what is getting in the way of you acting in the disciplined way that you know you can. I will leave it there. I will see you in the next video.